Hello, I'm Vanessa Hanschke, and I have the pleasure to present to you our CHI 2024 paper, Data Ethics Emergency Drill, a toolbox for discussing responsible AI for industry teams. I'm presenting this work on behalf of my co-authors, Rees, Merve Alanyali, David Hopkinson, and Paul Marshall. If the fire alarm went off right now, what would you do? I think the answer depends on where you're watching this video from right now. Would it be the same in your home as it would be in your office? Do you live in a houseboat or in a multi-flat building? Is your pet in the room next to you that you might want to save? What's your role? Are you a fire warden, maybe a parent, or just a visitor in the building? And yeah, what I want to say is that the way you react to the fire alarm goes beyond just following a script. Context is important. It's not just a set of rules in a fire safety handbook. It's important to know where you are, who you're with, what your role is, and all that feeds into how you would react. And this is why we have drills, so that we can kind of practice these rules and know also if all these interactions work in context with the other people who are around us when we are exiting a building together. So what do fire drills have to do with HCI? What does this have to do with responsible AI, which is the part that me and my co-authors were interested in? We are using responsible AI as an overarching term for AI ethics, data ethics, AI safety, anything about making AI good. And we see responsible AI today more like the fire safety handbook than the drills. So we have all the rules, we have some frameworks, we have tools to investigate fairness, for example. You can calculate metrics. So we have things basically like technical tools like fire hydrants, but what we really lack is methods to put these things into practice, to test them within the context of what is happening. And looking at frameworks such as those is concentrating on the higher level of AI governance, but if we move a few layers down, we arrive at the people who are building the AI systems, the developers. And developers have been interviewed about how they feel about ethics, and generally they see themselves as ethical. The problem is that they sometimes don't make the connections between their kind of abstract technical work and the real life context that they work in. Their general ethics somehow, they can't make the connections of how that relates to the ethical decisions that does exist in their technical work. And furthermore, developers, they're embedded into very complex contexts. So there's the industry context. AI is being infused into all kinds of industries with very different rules. So healthcare, finance, the way you implement things there will be very different. And besides that, there is also the organization, which has a hierarchy which the developer has to navigate. Products can have different affordances. End users will have different ethical viewpoints, perspectives that might feed into this. So an AI developer is currently working within a very, very big web, a complex web of context. And we thought, so a drill would be a great thing in this kind of, in the data ethics space, and we were wondering how we could bring this contextual practice of rules from fire drills into data ethics, and came up with the Data Ethics Emergency Drill. We call it sometimes DEED for short, from the initials, and it was inspired by speculative methods, so for example speculative enactments, and also we took inspiration from ethical role play in education. We had two leading questions. Firstly, what would an emergency scenario look like for data and AI problems? And what could practitioners learn from practicing ethical emergency scenarios? The data ethics emergency method that we came up had 3 main parts. First part was to craft a scenario. And because we wanted it to fit the context of the data science team that we were working with, what we did was we crafted a scenario in a workshop together with members of the data science team. Then we executed the drill. So we gathered the team members in a meeting, and they would be then presented with a scenario. And lastly, they had to reflect on the experience of discussing these scenarios that they were presented with. To study our drill method, we used a research through design approach. This is an approach which uses the practice of design to explore a research question. And the thing that we were designing, our artifact, was the DEED, the Data Ethics Emergency Drill. And by designing it, we kind of aimed to learn more about what does it mean to have a contextual practice for responsible AI. We did 3 drills, and these were carried out with 2 different data science developer teams. And at each drill, we would vary our approach a little to learn from the drills, and we would always take our learnings from the drill before. After we carried out all of these drills, about 9 to 15 months later, we wanted to evaluate what the long-term effects were of the drill, and carried out follow-up interviews with some of the participants of each drill. To give you a bit of an example what an emergency drill could look like, we came up with this toy example, and this was not a scenario that we actually did with a practicing team, but each of those teams had a scenario which we have to keep confidential, but they were always adapted to the very data science specific context that they were working on, those systems that they were working on. And so this toy example is a call center that offers pension services where the call handlers have been replaced with a chatbot, and automatic speech recognition is used to recognize the caller's text, and a chat bot will then converse with these pension seekers, a system that seems to work well on face value. But for the drill, we gather all of the team members of the developer team that are available on the day in a call, and they are then confronted with prompts via email. And this is what an email might look like. So our subject is Twitter thread about AI bias. It's an email from the CEO, and the CEO says that there was a very important AI ethics researcher who posted on Twitter about this new ASR system, automatic speech recognition system. But the researcher says there was discrimination present because their parent, who is a non-native speaker, their speech wasn't recognized, so now their pension is delayed. There's a big scandal, and the CEO is asking participants to respond. And what would happen then in the drill is participants would discuss what to do, how to investigate the problem, and how to formulate a response. So after carrying out our drills with a participant, each one different for each team, we analyzed the data that we had from the various drills in different ways, and I'll just present 2 parts of our analysis. The first one is the content analysis of the drills. This was from the recordings of the drills that we watched to look at what came up in the discussion, and the second one was the themes from the follow-up interviews that happened 9 to 15 months after the drill. So looking at what the topics were that the participants discussed within the drill, we came up with 4 kind of high categories of topics. The first one is concrete action points. Those were things that the developers could realize right away. So for example, after the call, they could go and do data analysis to understand the problem better. The second one was future action points. So these were things that they would do after they had solved the emergency. For example, create more awareness and knowledge through training, establish guidelines, establish leadership advocacy. So these are all things that they could do even if the emergency wasn't real. The third one is open questions, which was questions that were usually very hard and weren't resolved within the drill. For example, how do you accurately quantify socially constructed categories such as fairness? The last kind of points were clarification points. This would be, for example, short questions to the information source. And now looking at the themes from the follow-up interviews, how did the participants' kind of experience within the team change 9 to 15 months after the drill? We had 4 main themes. The first one was that the deed provided a safe space for exploring realistic dilemmas. The second one was that it confronted them with a diversity of experience. The third one was that the deed sharpened awareness of unarticulated responsibilities. So it showed where the human layer was in that abstracted world. And the last one was that participants asked that the deed be part of an ongoing discussion. In the interest of time for this short video, I'll demonstrate the first two themes through 2 quotes, but you can find all the themes described in detail in the paper. So one of the participants described how a few weeks after they had done the drill, the team experienced a very similar scenario, but this time in real life. And here's a quote that describes their experience. Not only did it give us more confidence when it happened, but it sort of meant that none of us were that afraid to speak up and give ideas and use it. So this quote shows how the drill had helped the participant realize that the situation was something that all team members cared about, and that practicing the situation in the safe space of the drill had given them more confidence in real life to speak up. Then looking at how the drill confronted participants with a variety of opinions, there was a participant who said, "I've kind of walked around with a perspective that I thought everyone was on the same page as me for a while. There were some little things that maybe identified to me that not everyone was where I was at, and even I wasn't where I wanted to be." So this shows how the participant here is learning more about the others and even about themselves through the drill. From the insights that we had gathered through evaluations, from observing the drills and the surveys and the interviews, we identified 3 key elements that resonate with related work in the literature. So the first element in these drills was friction. So the drill asks people that they engage with the uncomfortable parts of data science. And by making this kind of uncomfortable situation where things are not going smoothly, we encouraged an open discussion about values. The second one is consequentiality. We borrowed this concept from the work of Elston et al. So although emergencies are fictional, they're consequential because people are playing themselves in these scenarios. So even though the emergencies aren't real, the conversations are, and this has consequences. And the third one is mapping responsibilities to role. So an issue within the AI supply chain is that it's becoming long and complex, and so accountability sometimes gets lost because participants have to react to concrete situations in our drill. They have to map who is responsible for what, and this means that people don't only learn about what their job is in these emergencies, but also who to turn to in these kinds of situations. Thank you for listening and to me talk about data ethics emergencies drills. If you want to learn more about the project or use the tools, you can always see our updated resources on the website, www.gooddeed.ai. I'd like to thank Derek Edwards, Elaine Check, Kenton O'Hara, and Edwin Simpson for their academic and their support with designs, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And I'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsors and the research groups that we are part of. Thank you.